kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One name, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One name, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One name, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
nọ́mbà wa àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. Monday, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
A ní wọ́n kéré o wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. Monday, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
A ní wọ́n kéré o wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. Monday, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Hi everyone. Can anyone hear me? I think so. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, of course I can hear you.
Good to see you. I think you're supposed to have read one and what's his name again? There is also supposed to be a Taye, Oyelami, and Abayomi here. So maybe we should just wait for, I don't know, I guess 1-2 more minutes for them.
Okay.
We will start in the next couple of minutes. We're waiting for, I can see a question from the audience.
I think one is here.
Oh, perfect. But I still can't see. I think if you have just read one here, you're just going to start because we're 5 minutes in now. Why can't we still read one? Or is it just me?
I think it just came in.
Okay. Read one if you can't. Just send a message to the LSA conference, whether that's the engine room or something. Ask them that you're unable, we can't see your video or anything. I know that is amongst the audience. I can see him from the list of participants here. But since he's presenting, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be possible. Is it just me? Anyways, I think we'll just go ahead and start while we figure that out.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Is it good morning over there? Oh, I think we have a buyer here.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry, just 1 minute. I think someone is offering a way for Ridwan to. He should join using his personalized. Apparently, he didn't get the link. So if the LSE conference section B is listening to us, maybe you can help him out.
Yeah, I will send him the link. I'll try to send him the link.
He said he has checked his email, but he can't find a link for to join as a panelist. I think it's just join as an audience.
I will send him
So
the link.
Yes. Yes.
So if you are listening,
I just sent him the link. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So Ridwan, you can hear us. Nodin has sent you the link. You can try to join again. This time as a panelist. Okay, I'll just go ahead and start. So again, this is the second section of the section on Nigerian medical history, prospects and opportunities. My name is Adeja Digbite. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I'm presently working on my dissertation, which is tentatively titled Decolonizing Global Health, Environments, African Medical Practitioners, and the Politics and Science of Disease Control in Africa. My dissertation attempts to answer two major questions. These, how does disease emerge, and what are the historical circumstances and factors that made certain diseases legible while others are neglected. And I ask this question because Africa is seen as the hotbed of disease and affliction, right? It is almost like Africa is synonymous to diseases. Anyways, I ask this question using the lens of African doctors, right? From the colonial period to the post-colonial period. One of my major arguments is that African medical practitioners, right, played a major role, in the history of international and global health. But as I said earlier today, that the topic for this panel is bigger than my project, right? And I cited the example of Senator Ike Ekweremadu, right, who was charged with transporting a boy to the UK, in order to harvest his organs. And as the different comments we've been reading on social media still, but comes down to the same sets of questions that I think medical historians have been asking, in different ways, right? Like, why can't our leaders build medical facilities that is capable of attending to such medical situations faced by Senator Ekweremadu's daughter? And we also ask why is it that the senator's daughter is more deserving of life, right, than the thousands of other people who die from even diseases that already have treatment. Such question about why our health security cannot secure us, right, is some of the questions that medical historians ask, and history, of course, offers us perspective, right, about some of these issues. And then one of the reasons why finally we have read one. So one of the reasons why we have this panel is to ask. I mean, I'm not ignorant of the fact that there have been major works that has been done on medical history, right? But to really ask, if there's such a field as Nigerian medical history, and if we do have that field, what are the themes that are important, in that field? And then so we've started, in the morning, we have explored different fields. People have talked about international health. We have talked about the Nigerian health system. Then we've also had a presentation, right, from looking at the health in the colonial prison. And then so again we'll continue. We have 4 speakers this time around again. That was meant to be 3 sessions. We have 2 speakers for a particular on a particular topic, and then so we're going to be having 15 minutes for each of our speakers, and then we have 30 minutes for the question and answer session. So 15 minutes, let's try not to exceed that, because I think we already have 5 minutes period where we are trying to organize ourselves. And then so our first speaker is Mr. Ridwan Aribidesi Mohammed, who is going to be speaking on a history of British NGOs and family planning, which stops international and sexual reproductive health and rights in Nigeria. from 1976 to 2017. Ibrahim Mohammed holds a BA in History and International Studies from the University of Ilorin. He also has a master's, his master's degree in history from University of Ibadan, and he has a keen interest in women, gender, and sexuality, and with the intersection of health history, of course. So, Mr. Ridwan, you have the floor. You are muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting the topic, A History of British NGO and Family Planning, Mary Stopes International and Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights in Nigeria between 1976 to 2007. Mary Stopes International is a philanthropic organization in the area of sexual reproductive health and rights. It was named after a woman called Mary Stopes. Mary Stopes is a British middle-class woman who wrote the book Married Love in 1918. This book discussed thorny issues of reproductive health and sexual inequalities in the United Kingdom, and also issues that surround sexual education, sexual liberation amongst middle-class and poor women in the United Kingdom. However, it is important to note that all these ideas preached and propagated in this book by Mary Stopes are against the Victorian institutions and also the belief and the belief of what gender and sexual reproductive rights represents during the period under review. Also, it is important to note that this book written by Mary Stopes was rejected and banned in the United States, as it was against the order of the day in the period under review in the United States also. However, regardless of this rejection that Mary Stopes met in the hands of Victorian institutions, he went ahead to create the first NGO that was responsible for sexual reproductive health in the United Kingdom. That was in 1921. However, these ideals of Mary Stopes had different manifestations in colonial Africa, because these Mary Stopes ideas, which was rejected by Britain, which was rejected by the British society, eventually was seen as a policy instrument that guided most of the policies that surrounded sexual reproductive health and rights in colonial Africa, especially in colonial Nigeria. It is important to also note that Nigerian women and also other stakeholders, sexual health and rights were not docile. They were able to interject and instill their own beliefs and practices also with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights. This Mary Stopes stories offers a window into analyzing and understanding the history of family planning and reproductive health in colonial and post-colonial Africa. So one of the some of the problems that these proposed research tend to talk about or discuss about is the fact that most of the literatures that we found in the area of sexual reproductive health and rights, and also in the area of philanthropy, has to do with the American philanthropical organizations, and little or nothing has been done with regards to the British philanthropic organization. Even though the Britain, for instance, have the longest and the most enduring interaction with philanthropy and sexual reproductive health and rights in Africa, and of course, the reason is not far-fetched because they actually colonized many countries in Africa. Another problem is research tend to. Sorry, can you mute yourself? You're distracting me, please. Okay, another problem these proposed research tend to discuss is that in 2017, Nigeria recorded the highest number of maternal mortality rates neonatal morbidity rate. Also, Nigeria recorded the highest number of unplanned pregnancy, and also over 200,000 women were hospitalized and treated for complications resulting from unsafe abortion in 2017. Despite the funds and resources that these philanthropic organizations, such as Mary Stopes, USAID, and so on and so forth, has donated to the cost of reducing these menaces. Also, the COVID-19 lockdown pandemic, which occasioned the global lockdown, reduces the access of women to access maternal health care services, which also increased the numbers of these menaces come 2020 and also 2021. So the objective of this proposed research is also to look into the ruptures and continuities of British socio-medical policies and practices towards sexual and reproductive health and rights in Nigeria. This research also looks into the doings and undoings of Mary Stopes with regards to the issues of family planning in Nigeria, especially between 1976 and 2017. And finally, this proposed research also is to contextualize the complex policies and events using the real life experiences of Nigerians, especially Nigerian women, to communicate with the ensuing global debates in the areas of family planning. From one of the objectives that this proposed research tends to discuss is to look into the changes and continuities of the policies that has governed family planning in Nigeria till date, or till 2017 rather. It would be interesting to note that the British colonialists did not have a straitjacketed policy with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights across their colonial possessions in Africa. For instance, in colonial Nigeria, when the British administration took over Nigeria in the early 1900s, they preached and propagated population increase as a mark of civilization, using the spirit of Pax Britannica, pointing to the fact that the unbridled rivalry between African ethnic groups and also, quote and unquote, the barbaric practices amongst Africans, mark of incivility and also underdevelopment. Although there are arguments that point to the fact that the increase in population or decrease in population does not necessarily determine the level of civility or development or underdevelopment of a polity. Also, having said that, the British colonial government did not use the same yardstick in controlling the sexual reproductive health and rights issues in colonial Southern Africa. For instance, in colonial Zimbabwe, they had introduced the family planning services by 1953, and also by 1960, they had introduced the Depo-Provera injectable contraceptive, which raised eyebrow amongst the colonial subjects in colonial Zimbabwe. As a matter of fact, it led to this Depo-Provera injectable contraceptive became an instrument in the hands of Zimbabwean nationalists in campaigning against colonization and also using it to attain independence. The same thing happened in South Africa, colonial South Africa, which is known as a settler, also known as a settler colony, where the British also did not propagate population increase. Rather, they had introduced Family Planning Association by 1932, and also by 1945, the Family Planning Association grew so big that they had incorporated themselves into the International Planned Parenthood Federation. The same situation happened in Kenya. Having said this, where the NGOs and sexual reproductive health and right comes in with regards to their national interest and how the activities of this NGO communicate or connect with the policies of their home country, is when following the independence, a lot of NGO came up in the area of sexual reproductive health and rights. However, the dramatic personnel in these NGOs still keys into the workings of colonialism. And of course, majority of those that headed this NGO or that were active in these NGOs, some of them, many of them were former colonial administrators. Also, with the increasing age of neoliberalism and also globalization, NGO gained more power and recognition that they sometimes act as parastates, which made the activities and the policies of their own country very, very similar. And having said that, this project or this research is trying to connect the activities of Marie Stopes International with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights in Nigeria, and also the policies, especially the post-colonial policies of Britain in post-colonial Africa. So having said that, the connection of the activities of these NGOs and their home countries have led to distrust amongst the donor organizations, which are these NGOs, especially in this research. We'll be pointing to Marie Stopes International and also the recipients of these donations. Although suspicion and counter suspicion or distrust is not a new thing in the politics of philanthropism, because even during Marie Stopes' era within Britain, there was distrust between Marie Stopes and the Victorian institutions on one hand, and also with the activities of Marie Stopes, other NGOs in the areas of sexual reproductive and health and rights came up, and also there were mistrust among them. One of these mistrusts was the fact that they discredited Marie Stopes' efforts by saying Marie Stopes is not a medical practitioner, and as such should not be taken seriously with his ideals. Meanwhile, Marie Stopes also criticized the use of diaphragm, which was recommended by one of these rival, quote unquote, rival NGO in the area of sexual reproductive health and rights, on the account that it causes cancer and also infertility amongst British women. Narrowing down to Nigeria in the politics of,
Sorry, you have 4 minutes more.
Okay, narrowing it down to Nigeria in the with regards to the politics of philanthropism and social medicine, the 2003 oral polio vaccination campaign in London, Nigeria, also led to distrust among the recipients with the news that it causes HIV and also infertility amongst women. However, there are some facts sort of that I have gathered that we can use to connect the fact that the activities of these NGOs, especially Marie Stopes in Nigeria, with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights, is is well in sync with the policies of with the British government, and also does not necessarily reflect the essence of Nigerian women, and also does not reflect the need, does not totally reflect the need of Nigerian men and women intimate life. For instance, Microgynon and Longgynon, owned by a British pharmaceutical giant, is said to be the one producing most of the contraceptive and also contraceptive drugs, injectables, and also machines that are being peddled and also used by Marie Stopes, and also the ones that we find most in the pharmacy, in Nigerian pharmacies that are recommended by Marie Stopes and also their doctors, and also their doctors. So just so I am able to round off on time, it would to be interesting to also note that the perception, it should be also interesting to note that although this work is still in progress, and also such substantive conclusion cannot be made, however, primary evidences such as archival sources, official publication, and unpublished manuscript of Marie Stopes gotten so far point to the fact that Nigeria and Black women bodies at large remain an instrument British actualizing British neocolonial gains, despite the social medicinal, despite the social medical philanthropy gestures of Mary Stopes in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that brilliant presentation. I think one of the major aspects, right, of medical history, definitely has to do with sexual and reproductive health, and in fact, anything that has to do with health, as I think, as if Foucault has said, like anything that has to do with history of health is like it's a total history, right? And then so really appreciate that your presentation. And then so we say going into our second speaker now. We have is it Richard Taye Oyelami and Abayomi Stephen Jegede, who will be giving a presentation on the influence of Chinese traditional medicine on the development of indigenous medicine in Nigeria. Richard and Abayomi are from Obafemi Awolowo University and Macpherson University, respectively. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you so much. I greet everyone. Just as you've said, we'll be having our presentation on the influence of Chinese traditional medicine on the development of indigenous medicine in Nigeria. Let me quickly share this so that I'll be able to, go along with me. So, just as you have said, Oyelake, point of correction, it's not Oyelami. It is Oyelake Richard Taye, Oyelake Richard Taye from the Department of Philosophy, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ife, and myself, Jegede Abayomi Stephen, Department of History and International Studies, Macpherson. So the problem of the study is that the influx of Chinese indigenous medicine in Nigeria, in Nigeria market, and the paper also observes the consequences, both positive and negative consequences that is going to have on Nigeria at large. And also, and through that, the paper will make some recommendations that will be helpful to Nigeria. The methodology used by this paper is both primary and secondary data. We use this primary and secondary data to trace the background and as well the analysis of indigenous medicine and Chinese traditional medicine. Now, meanwhile, before traditional healing practices are used to be the dominant of people of this age-long healthcare method, and the culture and traditions of the Africans were tampered with, and the Europeans made us to see witnesses in the strong age-long indigenous medicine, and it was actually barbaric, and therefore the introduction of Western medicine was introduced actually to meet the needs of these people. And as a matter of fact, the Christians, the missionaries and the whites. So indigenous medicine, alternative medicine, refer to a set of healthcare practices which may be indigenous or imported, but actually delivered outside the mainstream healthcare system. And actually, it is usually characterized by poor regulations and no specification of among others. And in Nigeria, it may be, it may encompass local products and indigenous healthcare practices such as traditional physiotherapy, and as well as this imported complementary and alternative medicine, medicine product and practices such as acupuncture and acupuncture or chirotherapy. You can see the picture there. So the acupuncture and chiropathic, yes. Now, Nigeria is one of the countries of the world that is actually popular for the practice of traditional medicine, and it has actually been, it has a considerable number of its people, of its population relying on this method to maintain their health, or actually prevent and treat communicable and non-communicable disease. However, the campaigns for orthodox health practice seems to be actually relegating the use of traditional medicine to the background, which most of the indigenous knowledge seems seen as obsolete. The custodian of such indigenous knowledge, in some cases, have not actually passed down the knowledge to the coming generation before their departure to the land of the unknown. So those who did only employed oral transmission, with the inherent risk of mission, addition, or even being forgotten. And the Chinese economy, on the other hand, actually has always been embrace a traditional medicine as their primary healthcare source before major reforms in Chinese health sector. And this Chinese traditional medicine originated in ancient China and has actually evolved over thousands of years and curing ailments, such as stroke, partial blindness, arthritis, among others, and so on and so forth. And the practitioners of this traditional Chinese medicine actually at least make use of herbal remedies, and various mind and body practices, such as the acupuncture that we have earlier mentioned, that is Tai and Chi. So this acupuncture and the Tai and Chi have actually been widely used to treat or prevent health problems. Its efficacy proved enough led to the United States, where people use traditional Chinese medicine as a complementary health approach. And this is why traditional Chinese medicine is recognized the National Institute of Health in the US as an effective complementary and alternative modality, widely used by consumers and growing as a profession. And the increasing demand for, and as well as the popularity of indigenous medicine services in Nigeria has formed a point of attraction to researchers, policymakers, and professional.
Oh, okay, I think it's back.
Yeah. So sorry for. So as I was saying, as at today, I'm trying to bring back but I will continue. Good. So as at today, that Nigeria actually runs a dual system of healthcare delivery, and the officially recognized orthodox system and the barely tolerated traditional system, until the influx of this Chinese medicine into the market with modernity introduced. And in line with this development, traditional health practitioners in Nigeria made bold efforts to embark on on structural reorganization and repackaging. And that's why then you have this Okolonyu, Yemkem products, and the Yemi Omoba and the likes, in order to at least to rebrand their product and make it marketable, and at least so that Nigerians can actually have access to it. Now, first, they changed their identity from from one of traditional medicine to alternative medicine, and actually many practitioners due to this emerged, notably among such practitioners, just as I've mentioned the other time. You have Yenkem or Kolonyu, Ayodele, Slimmers and Yo-Yo Bitters, Lambo Herbs, and all of them centers, among others, package. And some herbal prescriptions in capsules, syrups, form of better consumption and regulations came up. And it is highly probable that the term traditional, as they were formerly called, seems more primitive. And hence the need for the new term, and the strategies became necessary in the face of the global age modernization of culture. And as it had the aim of gaining acceptance, as well as making it more interesting and attractive to people who actually were gradually imbibing new trends of this medicine. Now, what are the threats of Chinese medicine on the survivor? Before we go there, the influence of Chinese traditional medicine on the development of traditional medicine in Nigeria. What are these?
Sorry, please. We have just 4 more minutes.
Okay. I will try. Now, we see that the Chinese government has ramped up its promotions of traditional Chinese medicine in recent years, and in Africa at large, and in Nigeria particularly, as a key component of its controversial Belt and Road initiative. And its concentration on Nigeria is not unconnected to the fact that it is the most populous Black nation in the world, and major companies and many clinics actually have already been established across the continent. With some retailers planning to establish full chains. Full chain supply, and in order to achieve this feat, so and build diplomatic relations by providing health care, the Chinese government has been sending medical teams to Africa since 1963, and at least 21,000 medical professionals, including more than 2,000 traditional Chinese medical practitioners, are provided services in more than 45 countries, such as we have Nigeria, Cameroon, Malawi, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And these efforts have actually formed a pivotal element of the traditional foreign policy strategies in Africa and in Nigeria at large. And now the threat of Chinese medicine in the survival of traditional medicine in Nigeria. Now you can see some of the threat, that dependence of Nigeria on foreign health products. It will reduce the gross national product and increase the unemployment rate, and as well the lack of creativity and ingenuity will come up in Nigeria. Now, flooding Nigeria pharmaceutical market with Chinese medicine will definitely have multiple but very adverse effects on Nigeria. Part of this effect are it will reduce the gross national product, just as I've mentioned, and then there are palpable concerns over the impact of Chinese investment in healthcare in Nigeria on Nigeria's economic security. This is because the average Nigerians has the mentality to prefer foreign products to locally made ones. And also, the foreign direct investment from these Chinese multinationals are heightened Nigeria's dependence on the Chinese economy, and thus undermining its own economic security and reducing local production capacity. This has some of the challenges, threats that the Chinese traditional medicine has actually may pose, and the one will actually been seen. And before I close, another effect of this, what I've read out, is the alliance with Chinese medicine is increased. We actually increase unemployment rate, just as I've mentioned the other time. So the reliance of these Chinese made medicine will reduce the love for the love and the practice of our own indigenous medicine. Thereby, it will render the flora almost useless for immediate use. Curing sickness and increase the rate of people who have no tangible work to do. Let me quickly move to the recommendation that actually we are making concerning this work. So based on our argument, in the course of this presentation, so we are coming out with the following recommendation, and the first one goes to the federal government of Nigeria. So Nigerian government may also think they can actually think to establish a university of indigenous medicine in Nigeria, and then develop schemes that will make it work. So this is going to be beneficial in so many ways. For instance, it's going to serve as a means of employment. When you have these people, it will generate employment. So it will also serve as a medical advancement in Nigeria, as we have seen that these days, orthodox medicine is incapable of solving some medical challenges again. And researchers also can be conducted on African traditional, African indigenous medicine. So practitioners should be properly document their practices and skills to enable accuracy, and to enable them to transmit their system from one generation to another. So thank you for listening and for your patience. Thank you so much.
So if you can end the...
Okay, I will do that.
Yes, please. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Oyelaki, and I think Abayomi Stephen Jegede, for that presentation. I think one of the things that even historians, right, can also attest to is the importance, right, of indigenous medicine to general health system anywhere in the world. And I think your voice is also that of advocacy, apart from the actual research. And so thank you for that presentation. And now we move to our third speaker, Nuruddin Oladipo Ogundare. He's going to be talking about medical ethics in colonial southwestern Nigeria. I know Dean is a master's student at East Tennessee State University. He holds a BA in history and he also has a master's.
Challenge.
Mr. Bayomi, can you please mute yourself? He also has a master's in peace and conflict studies, from the University of Ibadan. His interest lies in medical history of Nigeria, international health organizations, and the sociocultural history of Nigeria in general. Mr. Anurudi, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share a part of my work or a part of my thesis or what will actually become my thesis here in East Tennessee University. So, as he said, I will be discussing about medical ethics and vaccination in southwestern Nigeria. I'm about to share my slide. Just a minute. So, the chairman said I'll be discussing about medical ethics and vaccination in Western colonial Nigeria from 1910 up to 1945. As you almost know, like vaccination is not something that's actually new to people. We all know about the concept of vaccination, especially in modern day Nigeria. We all what we call abere ajesara in one way or the other in order to protect us against one disease or one ailment or the other. And in the colonial period, vaccination became a form of political struggle between the colonial authority and also the different ethnic groups in Nigeria. So my thesis actually tried to look at all these events and how this constitutes as being medical ethics and how vaccination play a role into that particular concept of medical ethics or context of ethics. Before I actually continue, this paper actually built on existing African medical history. A lot of people actually written on the history of Africa, especially medical history, from different perspectives and different angles, and offer different perspectives on how we can actually look at African medical history. And one of the authors in which this particular thesis is actually built on is Ellen Tilly, which actually look at the medical ethics in Africa in general, and how Europeans were able to how Europeans were able to erode African traditional systems systematically through their different medical policies. So, and also apart from Tilly, who look at the history of medical ethics generally in Africa, other scholars of medicine in Nigeria too have also looked at it from a very different perspective too. One of those is we have Mufta Ojimo, who actually look at history of medicine from the period of the outbreak of the plague, and also we also have Dr. Mitala also look at the history of medicine from the angle of urbanization and all that. So all this in a way try to constitute a form of ethics about what form of ethics did the colonial master actually went against in the propagation of their medicine in colonial states. So the crux of my paper is that it argues that non-tropical diseases that were global in epidemiology actually contributed to how traditional medicine and Western medicine actually conflicted in the 20th century period. So I try to look at ethics and also medical pluralism. What do we mean by medical pluralism? Medical pluralism is in a way whereby we try to look at other forms of healing system that actually differs from Western biomedicine. And the Yoruba traditional system falls into this category because it also falls into the period whereby the Europeans were trying to build up their own medical system in the colonial period. So colonial medical design was political in nature, and where there is politics, ethical questions actually arises, in the sense that even the design of colonial medicine in itself at the beginning of the conquest of Africa was just not political in nature. The essence of it calls into question even ethics, because when we, I don't need to go into this, but for the respect of the audience, when we look at how medical history of colonial medicine actually came into being, we will actually know that it was actually built for self-service, not for the people, but for how the Europeans would be able to actually conquer most of the hinterland, especially in most of the hinterland in Nigeria and also some other part of Africa. Colonial medical administration grew without recourse to medical pluralism in Yoruba land. And as I actually tried to explain in the beginning, is that while they were actually trying to propagate their own medical system, they tried to like do away with any form of Yoruba traditional medical system. They try to do away with it, and they use systemic different form of systemic motive for them to be able to like suppress the idea of Yoruba traditional medicine. And how did they actually do it? Because they try to do this subsequently puts Western medicine at odds with traditional practice of disease eradication. And there are different types of diseases that the Europeans actually confronted during colonial period. And one of these diseases is the issue of the smallpox. The smallpox became an issue to the extent that it actually puts Western medicine at odds with traditional practice of how the disease could actually be eradicated. And as you should all know, vaccination in itself is not a form of cure for people who have already contracted disease. Rather, it is a form of prevention against disease that have not actually happened, so that people can actually protect themselves against this particular form of disease or any form of disease as it may be. So smallpox became a form of politics between the Western colonial authority and also the Yoruba people, the Yoruba who have already established a form of how smallpox could actually like be treated, or how smallpox could actually like be managed within them. So it's led to a form of power play between these two forms of people. It led to a form of power play between people who were like from a pre-colonial authority before the coming of the Europeans, and also the Europeans who came with a new form of authority. So vaccine introduction captured the ethical question that subsequently arise from the above. The reason why vaccine actually capture all this is more or less that vaccine in itself, I will try to like answer this in the next slide. Okay, vaccine that we also known as Abera Desara encapsulates power play between Yoruba traditional authority and also the Western power that actually usurped it. We have this form of people with this political power, this economic power, and this social power, especially in what Oduton tried to capture in the event of the politics of vaccine in Ebaland. What Oduton tried to do was that he was trying to like demystify the notion that the Ogboni group or the Ogboni court were actually more responsible for the spread of smallpox within the people. So he tried to demystify this notion out of it, that no, it wasn't like that. That Shakbalabu actually became the mouthpiece for the British colonial government, was not actually doing it in order for him to demystify, in order for him to castigate the Yoruba people, but rather in order for him to seek promotion within the colonial medical service, because it also came at a point whereby the colonial medical service actually doing away with native traditional rulers. I mean, native traditional practitioners, or I mean, Nigerians who are actually in the colonial medical service themselves. So they were demoting them from being from senior this thing to also junior medical officers. So Shakpa actually saw an opportunity and he keyed into a problem that the Europeans were already having. So what he did was that he tried to like demystify this particular notion that no, it doesn't happen that way. Like, this is what Shakba has to do. And he came with his data and also facts to actually support his argument that no, the Ogboni were not the propagator of or they caused the spread of smallpox within Eba. So what I'm trying to do with vaccine in itself as a form of ethical question is to base my thesis on this particular argument, but to look at it broadly or widely from other form of factors that actually make vaccine a form of ethical questions for the Europeans. And one of this is, apart from what Oduton actually did, other scholars too have also tried to like draw our attention on what the Europeans actually did during this particular period. And one of the issues is, you know, in as much as people try to like reject vaccination in the colonial period, that they don't know what was actually in it. Abigon Lawyer who actually did wrote an interesting and brilliant book on urbanism and Lagos and Dakar, tried to like, you know, juxtapose between these two cities and how people actually reacted to vaccine or how people reacted to European vaccination. It was that there was also fear that the Europeans were the one that actually, you know, because she did away with not smallpox, but another form of disease entirely, this time plague. But she believed, or what she wrote is that she argued that the people in Dakar, in Senegal, actually believed that the Europeans were the one that actually tried to like spread the plague disease in itself. And actually taking vaccination from them is tantamount to like, you know, so they decide to like reject vaccine from the Europeans. Now, the ethical question in it is that there are also other documents that have supported that even vaccine that are actually coming from Europe or from...
Sorry, you have 4 minutes more.
Okay. Even vaccine that are actually coming from from Britain were actually couldn't actually stand this test of time, because the document that actually supported this, that some of them can't survive in the temperate nature of the Nigerian climate. Then for the British, while colonialism has its ugly head, medicine in its own way actually like was a form of glorification for them, that this is actually what we actually brought to Africa. And vaccine is vaccinating the native or vaccinating the Nigerian people was more or less like a kind of like a victory lap for them. So for Nigerians or for the native to actually reject vaccination on different grounds, actually like deride this particular notion that they have about vaccination. So I look at it because vaccine in itself drew on clinical trial and medical initiative without recourse to medical malpractices. Because Tilly has actually like tried to warn us about that, because in the colonial period, we can't actually try to like determine what constitutes ethic in the colonial period. What constitutes ethic in the colonial period, but actually we can actually try to decide what constitutes ethics in the medical field, but not what constitutes ethic in the colonial period. So how do we actually do this in the face of whereby the Europeans were actually using different forms of incentive, different form of initiative in the forms of audits for them to be able to force people to actually receive vaccine that they themselves actually believe were in ways not going to work for the disease in itself in the colonial period, or for people that have already contracted disease. So this is also like drew on the international collaboration that actually emerged from this without local consent. Of course, the Europeans themselves were the state power. They hold the power within the states themselves. So they can control, they can make international alliances, because even Africa itself was actually drawn, the lines of, or the map of Africa was actually drawn without the consent of traditional rulers, or without the consent of the stakeholders in Africa. So they drew on international communication without even the consent of the people. And this they did with the Rockefeller Foundation in itself, which actually established a research organization in Yaba, Lagos. And when they did this, it was actually done without this thing. So, and for them, the Rockefeller Foundation itself in the 1930s, when they decided to establish this thing, were actually investigating yellow fever vaccine, and not even the smallpox vaccination that the Europeans actually believed that the Yoruba traditionalists were actually propagating.
This should be rounding up now.
Okay. These people actually relied on documents from the following locations. The Wellcome collections in the United Kingdom has a very large online repository whereby you can actually get different form of data to support any form of medical history. Then the Nigerian National Archive, which actually valuable documents from the Southern Province. The newspaper articles and opinion pieces from both are actually form part of what actually made this research. Thank you.
So you can we can end your sorry. So yeah, we have just, I think, 25 minutes more, you know, because we started a bit late. We were trying to sort out you know, Mr. Reed's one's you know, Zoom link. Anyway, that was also a brilliant, you know, presentation. But you know, we already have some questions in the is it in the Q&A? It's not in the Q&A, from the chats, and I'll quickly just go right into it. And then, so the first question is addressed to Ridwan. It says, nice presentation, Mr. Rido. This is for Mr. Tijani Muftar. Could the narrative of distrust of NGO have extended to sovereign too, as can be seen in the letter G that greeted COVID-19 vaccination of AstraZeneca? Could you quickly, can you quickly answer? You are muted. You are muted.
So the letter G that greeted the AstraZeneca vaccination cannot be dissuaded from the fact that it's also one of those distrust issues that happens with regards to social medicine and philanthropism. So we would recall that during the COVID-19 vaccination, there were issues of what we call vaccine nationalism, whereby some set of vaccines are said to be kept for some nationals, while some are said to be kept for some other nationals who, quote unquote, are people of color, perhaps in Africa or North America, or South America rather. So I cannot say specifically if it's also the same issues of distrust, but then it cannot be totally cleared of issue of distrust.
Thank you very much for that. I think the next question is by again by Tijani Muftar to I think it's for the Mr. Abayomi, that how would you react to the claim of orthodox medicine that the challenge of traditional medicine is that of dosage and measurements, which tend to play down belief in the efficacy of traditional medicine? You can quickly respond to that.
Please, can I have the question again? I'm Dr. Richard Oilake.
Okay, so the question again is that how would you react to the claim of medicine that the change of traditional medicine is that of dosage and measurements, which tend to play down belief in the efficacy of traditional medicine? Is that clear enough now?
Oh, well then, but I think that we should be careful of having to misrepresent indigenous medicine framework and structure. If that kind of a question is coming from orthodox medicine, then it is just like a view which Bewaji is going to characterize as epistemicide. It is going to be to the effect that you are just trying to come from a superior scientific point of view, by which it is just a question of opportunity. You know, if indigenous medicine, as it were, has also been founded, being researched, many more in-depth truths about it, some properties that may be well presented might have been found, you know, but find out instead of that, we are trying to run away, rather giving it so many what you may call opprobrious nomenclatures that could make it to be jettisoned, abandoned. You know, I tell you, in some of the attempts that have been made by some practitioners of indigenous medicine, most especially in Yoruba land, they've tried to identify the ingredients and dosage and all of those. But I mean, to the level of their capacity, even when you cannot actually identify a very strong means of being founded, being researched, if they could go to that point, then it means that if they had been subjected to a very strong research, is very strong interest being funded, some better, deeper things might have been found. Even consider the orthodox medicine that has been so researched, so funded. We still find out that when you bring it into the African context, African society, African milieu, there are some illnesses that are still not being captured yet. I'm not saying they can be captured, but I'm saying that why not try and develop the indigenous one? Look at the China that we're talking about. Man, they are trying to develop both what you purport to refer to as the orthodox and the indigenous ones. And that is why in China today, you have maybe they develop it to the point of higher institution that they could research. And that is part of what we are also recommending in Nigeria, that instead of having to kill the initiative and ingenuity here, why not just develop this one? Why not spend on it? Why not open it up to research? And that is going to be a means of developing what is actually ours, except that we have completely lost that kind of self-identity, just as you are going to have in I think, PS black skin, white mask, that we are just carrying everything about the West around, believing that nothing about us is actually good or whatever. So the point we are making is that it is not impossible that African medicines is presented with accurate dosages, ingredients. We have seen that. What we are actually suggesting or recommending is that should be improved. upon. And if it can, there are so many existing illness or ailment or sicknesses on African soil, especially in Nigeria, that we can take care of. So when we understand, and eventually we need that to be done so that we are going to attack that epistemic side. Is already a syndrome here, and we are so afraid of it.
Thank you. Thank you for that elaborate response. The next question is for Nuruddin. The question is, what was the reaction of the Egba native government and the Egba women in particular to this? You are muted. Please, your response is in 2 minutes.
Okay. Oh, in the first period, for as we all know, like state power actually play a lot in how people actually react to different form of order. And for vaccination, for the Europeans, they did a lot of things, and one of the things they did was to issue vaccination ordinance so that they will actually force people to actually like take the vaccine when they actually come in contact with the disease, or rather for them to be able to like prevent the prevalence of the disease in itself, even though people don't actually know what was in the vaccine or not. So for the Egba native government, they try to like go with the traditional this thing in the first place. And as time goes on, because what the British actually did was, it was actually a process. It wasn't something that they actually did in an instant. Now, why do people try to like support the traditionalists in the first instance? But as time actually goes on in the 1940s, when the new people actually started to rise, they have no choice other than to support the British government. And again, I mean, this was actually backed by vaccine ordinance, because if any native or any government actually tried not to actually report any form of practice of Ogboni or any court of Shopono or smallpox, then the British will actually like try to like react. But some people try to like run away from the city and also go into the hinterland. In a way, so state power actually reigns supreme in one way or the other, for them to be able to control the narrative and also force people to take the vaccination.
Okay, quickly, you have 2 more questions, so you try to answer this question. These questions together. They are both from Monsuru Moritala. Goes. My question goes to Nuruddin Ogundari. Can you please explain further your position that Europeans ab initio developed vaccination to conquer the hinterland of Nigeria? That is one. The second one is, my suggestion also goes to, Ogundari Nuruddin. Try to look at the sociocultural perspectives in terms of rivalry between the Ogboni people and the colonial Orthodox medical practitioners vaccination. And so the other one is more like a suggestion, but can go ahead and answer the first question.
Oh, what I actually mean by that is that well, actually we can't actually call quinine a form of vaccine itself, but it's also a form of prevention for them to be able to like move into the hinterland, because of course the Europeans were on the border of on the border of Lagos before they actually conquered Lagos, and Lagos actually gave them the initiative for them to move into the different hinterland. And as Adi Ajayi once wrote, not vividly, but a kind of minute way, is that why Nigerians actually like have they have their own form of vaccination in itself, which is what we actually to what they call inoculation, how they treat all these form of diseases. At the same time, the Christian missionaries actually try to like introduce the form of vaccine as a form of incentive for them to be able to like convert to Christianity too in itself. This is something that I didn't actually go into detail in, but it is something actually mentioned in work, the Nigerian New Edit. So this gives us perspective of how like the Europeans, the motive of the Europeans themselves, because as time actually goes on, as they develop quinine, as they become resistant to mosquito, they conquer different hinterland, and which was also self-serving for them. But as time goes on and as disease started breaking out, so smallpox, plague, yellow fever, and all these diseases that need vaccination for them to be able to like control it, the narrative actually changed. And at the time, they started seeing medical intervention in itself not for, but as a form of gift to Africa, as a form of them actually introducing medical science to Africa itself.
Okay, so thank you, Nur. So we have another question also from Monsieur Meritala. That and these questions are for Stephen Jagede. And then it goes: who pioneered Chinese acupuncture in Nigeria? What influence did Tianxi have on the marketing and packaging of Nigerian indigenous herbs? Mention the hospitals where Chinese trained Nigerians in Chinese medicine, as paraphrased in your presentation. I think that's for, in the absence of the co-presenter, Mr. Richard. Can you answer those questions, or do you want me to repeat them? Oh,
please, can I have the question again, please?
So the question again is for who pioneered the Chinese acupuncture in Nigeria, who is responsible for, whether it's the practice of acupuncture in Nigeria. What time do you think this started in Nigeria? Another question is what influence did Tianxi have on the marketing and packaging of Nigerian indigenous herbs? And if you could also mention the hospitals where Chinese trained Nigerians in Chinese medicine, as paraphrased in your presentation. I think this can, question can be taken as, can also be taken as a comment that could probably, research going forward if you don't, feel like you can answer it right away.
Well, I don't know if I could just say a few things.
Okay.
Thank you. Acupuncture, as reflected in that presentation, is a Chinese method of indigenous medicine practiced in China. And then, it is being practiced in Nigeria and all of those. Well, we may have to do some further findings concerning that.
Sorry, please. Ridwan, you are not muted. You are not muted. We can hear your call.
From where?
Please, can you?
So we have 10 minutes remaining. Go ahead.
Mute yourself, please.
Okay,
now,
okay. How do you know?
Ridwan, you are not muted, please.
Yeah, very well.
Sorry, unfortunately, you have to just continue.
So
please go ahead, sir.
I was trying to say that it does mean that acupuncture is actually a Chinese system of indigenous medicine. The point that could there was that Nigerian government so recently at a particular point in time entered into a memorandum of understanding allowing the Chinese government to come into Nigeria, perhaps training people or market products. That was done, and then it is there. You find out that there could be so many things actually to be wrong with that. For instance, I want us to be so careful about that. COVID-19 and up now, including China, they are all stunned as to why African, especially Nigerians, survived that onslaught. And China, for all you care, is one of scientifically and technologically developed countries of the world at present. And it does at it. When you then open your border, then you never can tell. I mean, Nigerians may subtly become experimental specimen through that. And you have to be, and that to say that it is not going to be correct. There couldn't have been a justification for that. Instead of allowing that, why don't you home grow? Why don't you send people out to go and study how things are done and bring them back and let them develop things? Let them make things work, you know, except that we are carrying a certain belief that is so dogmatic that we are really question. So we are trying to identify some abnormalities and some dangers in allowing Chinese product like that to come and flood Nigerian market. It's going to really weaken Nigeria the more economically. It's going to weaken us the more concerning our ingenuity and all of those. And if that continues, you know, I mean, nobody wants to be so pessimistic here. You know, so I want us to be so, and that is why we are so, we are forceful in our recommendation and our observation. We have to be careful.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I think Mr. Mutala is also suggesting that, you know, generally, you know, the research going forward should, I mean, I think this can be applied to all the other, you know, participants, you know, about like, you know, trying to have like a specific, you know, time frame, and then to also, you know, sort of deal more with, you know, specific, you know, data and the sources. I believe, you know, as the speakers have said, you know, some of this research are still in the basically just in the pipeline, you know, right? You know, it's still needs you know, a lot of work to be done on them, and I'm sure they must they will take that advice by our Mr. Professor. And then so I mean, just to sort of round up, if any of the speaker also have you know, questions that they want to ask you know, each other, this is the time, you know, to also do that. If you also have 2 minutes to also like you know, drop a comment that you were not able to drop you know, during your presentation because of time. You have just 4 minutes. You can do that now before we round up.
For my this thing is more of a suggestion for this thing for Mr. Ridwan. Anyway, like something just happened recently. Like the US just like do away with Roe versus Wade, which actually has to like do with human rights. It's something which is actually like specific to what you actually, I mean, woman rights to abortion and contraceptive. The law which has been in the US for almost 50 years. So they just do away with it just today. So it's a landmark decision for the Supreme Court. And this actually shows the power that state machinery actually have on the women bodies and the likes. And since we were actually discussing about contraceptive, and I will actually like try to like suggest about, because you did mention when you were doing your comparative analysis about what's actually happening in Southern Africa, what's happening in East Africa. I would try to like suggest that maybe perhaps you should actually try to like engage with the book of Tabitha Kanogo, who actually like, you know, worked on maternity ward in Eastern Africa, whereby she tried to like analyze the situation whereby traditionalists or traditional sentiment in respect to in respect to what do they call it, women. I'm lost for word. In the traditionalists naturally like affected how women were actually being perceived in this community. And again, this is actually important, not because of this particular lesson, but because the Christian missionary actually like play a large role in it too. And they play that role not in form of an authority, but in form of a volunteer organization. A volunteer organization that actually needs the authority of the definitive power, them to be able to like, you know, make decisions on women both in land. So I mean, this is actually like important.
I mean, it's really you know, awesome that you mentioned the Roe versus Wade that was recently overturned in the US. That's a really milestone, decision that I think, Ridwan should really, really engage with. Do you want to respond to that, or do you also have comments?
So with regards to the landmark decision, thank you for pointing out that out. But what I've also played out in history with regards to the sexual reproductive health and rights is that more often than not, there is this policy that is called the Mexico City policy. That policy is often valorized or implemented once a Republican president or Republican government comes into power. And you're right that the missionary plays a very huge role in how that decision play out and all of. The same way Republicans generally use the religion and most likely the Catholic in valorizing or propagating most of the ideas with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights. So there has been a back and forth thing, and let's see if this would not eat another mention going forward. But I will take of that going.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last word? Because we have to round up now. Mr. Richard, 30 seconds. Do you have any last word?
Nigeria should get ready and be prepared to weather another pandemic should it come up. I see the Western world pointing their attention at us, and we have to find a means of developing a homegrown medical system. Otherwise, it's possible that we become an object of experiment, which is not going to be so good for us. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your presentation. Thank you the audience for being part of this. I hope we have a wonderful rest of our nights.
Thank you, bro.
Mr. Tijani Mufta, keep saying that you should try to send your contacts. Perhaps after the program we can try and get his contact so that I'm sure he has something for us. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.